a few people asked about how we do like damage and stuff in VFX. So I think I might just do like a quick video on the general idea of one of the methods. So in VFX, there's always like multiple ways of doing everything. Sometimes effects will do like the shattering themselves. Sometimes we'll have to do like pre-damage ourselves. And then sometimes effects might do something and then give us a model to clean up and jack in. But we can just do a quick thing of one of the methods, which is, it ends up being like the most common I've found. So say for example, we have like this plane here, and then like the wing gets like ripped in half or something, like, you know, a piece of shrapnel flies off and rips the wing off or something like that. Usually we would just do the cut and damaging ourselves. So the way it usually kind of works in the film, it's not actually like one model being like damaged. Like that's not what you see in the film. You see like your complete asset like this traveling. Like imagine we have the shot of the plane flying and then it hits something and the wing rips off, right? So what happens is as the model hits the object, it actually swaps out this model for the post-destroyed section in just like one frame. And then that's what you see. So you actually swap out the model itself, and that's how you do like that's what the effects actually looks like in the film. So essentially we just do the post-damage state and obviously the standard asset, right? So, all right, let's just do something super simple. Usually what we can do is just something basic, like maybe we'll just do, why is this like this? Top. Cool. Let's just rip off the wing, maybe like here or something. Usually we just use like multi-cut or something and just slice through here. We let that thing run, do its thing. What I'm gonna probably do now is I'm gonna grab the wing here and I'm gonna make a copy of it. I'll just hide this one. And what we essentially have to do is kind of make a, maybe we just delete this like this actually. Something like that, delete that. And then we can delete all of this here. And then we go back to our other destroyed wing, this one here. Delete this one here like this. So this is pretty much what we have now, right? We have both sides of the wing, and they're essentially both two different models at this point. Cool. So the easiest way of doing the damage, you know, sometimes, like I said, like effects can give you the damage themselves. But if we want to do something quick and easy for us, like the main thing you would usually do is look up, obviously, reference of what real planes look like. You actually want to see what a real ripped wing looks like. But one of the easiest ways of doing damage on something like this is literally just using soft select and then just rotating like this and pulling this up here. So essentially what we're just going to do is just run down the length of this, bending the panels up like this. So we take this and just ice like this. Maybe put the shading on default as well. So this is the general idea of what a damaged plane looks like, right? Small stuff like this we can just delete and rotate up like this. But yeah, you'll notice like obviously the topology is pretty messed up, but when it comes to like effects and like this like damage sort of stuff, usually it's okay just like pre-smoothing it and then just coming in and actually doing like bespoke cut-ins and damage yourself if you want. Stuff like this, and just delete this stuff. So this stuff I wouldn't really care too much about having the topology good. Do you not clean up topology? Nah, not really. There's no point of having like special custom topology for like a damaged thing like this, which is going to be like a quick blurry mess flying past the screen, right? So the topology itself for this stuff doesn't really matter too much. As long as it's like, you know, not n-gons and stuff, then you should be fine. But yeah, I would just start grabbing all this stuff. Just start rotating, pulling verts around, stuff like that. One thing we do want to do though is, let me just grab my UV checker. So one thing we do want to do is we want to make sure the textures are preserved between the clean and the destroyed asset. So one thing we should do, what I usually do is we delete the side panels. Actually, fortunately for me, I've UV'd it to the point that I can just select them like this and delete them, which is super handy. We want to make sure we preserve the textures. So what I usually do is I delete the side thickness, and we need to give this proper thickness, right? So we grab this, extrude this down. And then I would put the new UVs, so including this bit here and the side bit here. I'll just do something quick and hacky for now. Create automatic. So what you do, your new geo that you've created usually goes on a separate UDIM, and you keep your UVs where they are for the top. Yeah, you want to make sure your textures are preserved, because what we're going to do is you're going to swap from your full plane to your post-destroyed plane. So all your decals and your damage, or not damage, but your like wear and tear from the original texture must transfer to this one. So usually keep your textures, I mean your UVs where they are for the top one. But anything new usually gets UV'd and put onto a separate UDIM somewhere else. And all of the new damage material or damage geo goes up here. But yeah, this is the general idea of what a post-destroyed mesh looks like. It actually doesn't really matter that the geo isn't clean, because in most cases, this stuff is just going to be quick and blurry and messed up anyway, so it doesn't really matter that much. As long as it's just like not n-gons and stuff like that. But yeah, so essentially what you do is you just take this and you just start applying it to all of the geo along the wing, essentially. You know, you just keep obviously grabbing the geo, you know, rotating it, all that sort of stuff. Obviously with effects, you can get away, no effects, with damage stuff, you can get away with pretty broken, crazy geo. But it'll be fine. But yeah, with this stuff, definitely look up like real world reference of like what an actual like ripped metal actually looks like. This is pretty hacky and super quick. It's not the best, but I would definitely have reference on the side while actually doing this. And then the main thing you need to do now is you need to also fill in the gaps, right? So usually what happens with this sort of thing is, you know, you look up real world reference of what is inside of a real wing. So usually they just have like a, just some sort of like wing structure. So we just need to essentially close the gap with what should be inside of a wing, essentially, right? Yeah, imagine you have like, you know, the proper, like the holes here and stuff like that. Maybe if you want, you could have some like cables and stuff coming out of here as well. Essentially the idea is just this, when it ripped in half, should look like the inside of what a wing should look like, right? And you can kind of see the general idea of this, what this looks like. Obviously you don't just do one panel, you do all of it. What you could also happen is like, in this case, maybe this flap itself doesn't actually get ripped in half. Maybe this could get broken off as its own piece and flies off that way. But as far as like the general tearing of wings, this is how it is. Yeah, the main thing you just need to be careful about is preserving your textures. You know, the way I said, using the UV method. And yeah, just rotate the geo. You know, rotate the geo. If you need more topology, usually it's okay just to maybe like grab some of this and like pre-subdivide it. And then now you have more geo to start, you know, like pulling things around and start cutting. Yeah, the good thing about like FX geo is you can be pretty rough with this stuff. Like honestly, some of the geo I've received from the FX team in like, you know, from Houdini is crazy. It's like it's way more like screwed up topology than this is. But yeah, this is just the general idea of doing damage pretty much. I know it's not the nicest thing to look at, but it's just how it is. Usually we don't really have the time, and there's no real point of having like a super clean mesh for effects geo, just because it's not really going to matter. Like this is not like something that is going to be deforming again later. If something needs to deform real time, that will be done by effects. Like that's not a modeling thing, right? This example here is more of like a pre and post destroyed damage state. And you would hand, no, effects is never going to touch this. So this will never go to effects. Okay, so we have the full wing here. That one turns off here. And then destroyed turns on here. This one's off. Okay, so what's essentially going to happen, like in the film itself, is your full plane will be flying somewhere. And then imagine like a shell flies through the wing. What it's going to do is it literally swaps to the post-destroyed version, like a single frame. And then this, oh God, let's take this out actually. And then this will be free to be like, this will be free to like fly away essentially. And that's the concept of how effects can be done in film. It's not always done this way. This is just like the pre and post destroyed idea. So this is why I mean, this will never actually come to effects. And this happens depending on, what the actual need is of the shot, right? Oh, I put this out of the group. But yeah, does this concept make sense? As the frames swap, you end up going from your full asset, swapping to the post-destroyed one. But yeah, and then obviously like rigging and stuff, well not rigging, but like animation and stuff, they can do whatever they want with these separate pieces, right? They can have this going off here and doing whatever they want. Actually, let me use an actual example. So I worked on this for Star Wars Episode 8. Here, you can see it here. So what this is, what you're looking at here is the full asset. And what you're looking at here, well, God, that single frame afterwards. Let's go to slow motion, actually. Playback speed off. So this now is the post-destroyed one. And this is literally what I'm talking about. So this wasn't done by effects. Like the effects themselves, like all the debris flying everywhere, that's done by effects. But the actual splitting of the vehicle is two different models just turning on and off, if that makes sense. So I literally cut this wedge out of the ship. And all of this stuff, this is all done by effects. And I modeled so what I did was I actually broke off a section of it and made it like a post-destroyed chunk, which was this. And the rest is done by effects. Like they literally create their own debris. Yeah, so all these slices are pre-done in the model itself. And then obviously, I mean, that gives us just a very basic thing like this. Then effects obviously goes and does that really cool shit on top of it. But yeah, also the main thing as well, like I mentioned, is making sure you preserve the textures on top. Because the idea is you want to be able to swap from the clean one to the destroyed one, right? So it means like if your textures aren't matching one to one, it will look way too clear, way too obvious. I mean, fortunately with all the debris that's being generated by effects and stuff like that, you can hide a lot of that stuff, but it's usually better just to have it consistent. You just extract the faces. Even if it's not perfect, it doesn't even really matter, right? And then just start like rotating the panels out. Maybe there's been some form of like internal explosion in this thing. Maybe it'd be cool to have like an actual panel, an actual metal tear like this. If you have a tear like that, then it means you can come in and move this one around and offset these two, maybe rotate these in a different way. And this is the general idea of how you do damage, right? Obviously, if that one exploded this way, it means this one probably also exploded out like this way. And then we can do the same thing again, come here. Maybe pull that over here. But yeah, just use soft select, just use rotate, and just start pulling some verts around. You can end up with some pretty cool, easy damage. Yeah, this looks like, I don't know, there's like an explosion inside here, as, you know, force the panels out. Yeah, this is essentially what we saw. You know, you have your full complete asset, it swaps out to the post-destroyed version, and then the wing breaks away. And then, like, to break up the silhouette and have more like more of a, you know, add more organic feel to it, you could have like some cables kind of running out, or, you know, some broken pipes. I mean, this probably wouldn't have pipes, cables it would though. You can have some cables coming down, stuff like that. But yeah, like all of this sort of workflow, usually this has like, sometimes it has nothing to do with effects. Like effects could give us the pre-shattered version. That happens sometimes. Like I've received that before. Like, you know, I built a vehicle that I had to build effects friendly. Effects did the pre-shatter for us. Then I took that geo, I cleaned up the geo, and then we checked that into the pipeline as the pre-shattered version. So that one I didn't have to do the damaging. The damaging was done for me, but I still had to come in and clean up, fix the UVs, do all that sort of stuff. And it still, in the end, was the same idea. The only difference was I didn't do the damaging. Someone else had done it and I just cleaned it up. The cleanup still had to come to me though. But what I'm saying is it's still not like a live thing happening in frame. It's literally just swapping between two different models. The full asset and the post-destroyed one. But couldn't this be handed to effects? Yeah, but usually they don't have the time to do this sort of stuff. So, okay, I guess another thing it can also come down to is literally just effects might just not have enough artists to do the work. If effects have to worry about a lot of other effects simulations on the show, a pre-damaged wing is something we can just do on our end and they don't even have to worry about. So it can also come down to like who is busy and who's not. For example, we can take this load off the effects artist plate, but it's not like we can take sand simulations off the effects artist plate, if that makes sense. So this might be another reason why we get this in model, just because effects might not have the time to do this. And the reality is this is going to have to come back to modeling anyway to do the post-damage state. So we might as well just do it ourselves. Because also what happens is, sure, you might see the destruction in the frame, but then what happens when it comes to the next, the next shot where you have just a shot of the wing itself, you know, falling by itself, right? So this wing now is its own asset. So this also needs to be checked into the pipeline as its own asset, because it's now going to be like an independent character falling separately, if that makes sense. So this is why this stuff always has to come back to us anyway, is because this might end up being its own asset. Or, for example, we might have to see like a post-damage version of the plane. Like imagine the plane keeps flying with the destroyed wing. This is now a new asset, so we need to assetize it regardless. So that's why we might as well just do it ourselves. Like in the Star Destroyer scene, FX is busy doing all the cool particle sims and stuff on top of the damage. Yeah, exactly. Like that's another prime example, is like the Star Destroyer ripping scene was like a massive collaboration between all departments, right? So the only way we could take load off the effects team was to do the pre-damaging ourselves. It really depends on the established workload. In advertising, we used to do the modeling and VFX, also depending on the scale of the project. Yeah, 100%. Like this is not like the only way effects is done for this sort of thing. It's just one of the ways it's done. And this is the way I mostly see it, purely because this is what comes back to modeling, right? Usually it's either effects will do the pre-shatter for us and we'll clean it up, or we'll just do the shatter ourselves and address it. But yeah, obviously, once again, like I know people are going to bring up that, oh no, why don't you do it a different way? It's just based on whatever is needed at that time for the project, right? Prime example of, the Star Destroyer. It made sense from modeling to split it because effects had to worry about so many other things first, like externally from the splitting. There might be different demands. Like I said, it also comes down to things like scheduling. Like FX might be too busy to do this stuff. While usually like this sort of damage stuff usually comes on like much later in the project. So a lot of the main modeling assets are already kind of done. So the modelers are much more idle than the effects team. The effects team are usually like full swing at this point, while the modelers have usually finished most of the hero work. So we can come in and help with the damage stuff. But yeah, I guess this also kind of applies to, you know, people just doing their own personal project. If someone needs to do a damage thing, like Jan is doing a damage section of his Yoga, right? And this is how I would do it. I would just grab the geo he already has, you know, start doing crazy damage, you know, like this, you know, start deleting this sort of geo and then just start rotating. So even like aside from, you know, effects in the film industry, this is just a way of doing, you know, damage to your personal projects essentially. I mean, this is pretty extreme here. Maybe don't do this crazy, but yeah, that's just the general idea, right? Just soft select, rotate and pull verts around. As long as you're not doing anything crazy, like don't just, like it has to be within reason, right? If the wing is split here, I wouldn't ever go this way because now you're adding extra geo which doesn't exist. If anything, it should always come backwards, like this. Oh, like this way. Because the idea is you don't really want to add, like this is the panel here, right? You don't want to add extra surface detail or extra surface itself, which is not in this panel width. So you wouldn't just get both your panels and start doing this, because now you have extra, now you've essentially just created extra panel surface, which doesn't exist, right? It's always better to reduce instead of add, for sure. Were n-gons fine? Usually I would get rid of the n-gons. You could even just like pre-smooth it like this. Like when it comes to this sort of thing, right? I know it's good to keep your quads and stuff consistent, but when you have like a post-destroyed mesh like this, it usually doesn't really matter if your topology looks something like this, right? Because this is not going to be, the reason we have like topology being, density being consistent and clean over a main asset, right? It's just so it's flexible. But when you have like a destruction like this, there's no need for this to be flexible anymore. So you can just subdivide it up and just leave it as it is, you know, and that's pretty much it. You do have to get rid of the n-gons though. That is something you have to do. But something like this is normal. Having like a standard plane and then like, for example, the tear has a much higher density just because we have much more, you know, detail and stuff to work with, right? It's just because, yeah, we don't need to worry about keeping this flexible. Once something is in its post-destroyed state like this is it. This is pretty much what it's going to look like, right? There's no going back from this. Usually, I mean, once again, it depends on like the task at hand. Usually this would be good enough in Maya. Obviously, I would spend much more time than the 20, 30 minutes I spent doing this sort of thing. But yeah, you would maybe spend a few days doing the destruction pass. But usually you can do enough in Maya, I think, for this sort of stuff. But yeah, this is nothing too special. It's just the idea of how, I mean, this is, I guess, is a pretty good example with the topology on. You can literally see it goes from your full asset and then swaps out to the post-destroyed one. Yeah, this is generally the idea of how effects is done a lot of the time in movies. Whether this is done, the pre-shadow is done by us or effects artists, it usually ends up coming through us regardless to do the cleanup and get checked into the pipeline.